Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Redding, and I'm the President and CEO of Preservation Maryland, which is the home of the Campaign for Historic Trades. On behalf of our organization and our partners at the National Park Service, I'm so pleased today to be able to introduce our 2023 Harrison Goodall Fellowship Capstone Project presentation. This was inspired by a gift from Harrison Goodall, who's here with us today, and his tremendous generosity, and made possible by Preservation Maryland. And this fellowship now aims to develop students and enterprising professionals at all different parts of their careers into preservation leaders of tomorrow, and to provide some funding and support to make that possible. And as most of us know here today and who are watching, the Harrison Goodall Fellow from our past year, the 2023 Fellow, is Molly Baker. And Molly, as many of us know, serves as the HOPE, which is Hands-On Preservation Education Crew Manager in the Preservation Services and Outreach Department at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She is a graduate of Belmont Community College Historic Preservation Building Preservation Program, which many of us are familiar with. And was drawn to building preservation by her belief in the value of learning about history through structures that hold stories of our past, which I think a lot of us can find a lot of similarity and commonality in. Her project, the Capstone project for her fellowship, was to collect, analyze, and publish replicable models for preservation trades training, which I know many of us are very interested in. And her goal is to increase program accessibility to generate more awareness of traditional trades, build interest in that field, and hopefully begin to offset the really tremendous need that the field has for more entrance to the workforce. So I think all of this is incredibly important and exciting, and really timely, and excited to hear from Molly and turn it over to her for her presentation as a Capstone Fellowship.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that introduction. So I'll jump right into my presentation here. There we go. As Nick mentioned, I'm the 2023 Harrison Goodall Preservation Fellow. I spent the last year developing a preservation trades program creation guide, including a printable roadmap and accompanying website to disseminate the guide. And I'm really grateful that this opportunity allowed me the time and space to do that. And so I would like to start with just expressing that gratitude. I want to say thank you to all of the folks that contributed to this wonderful program. The Harrison Goodall Preservation Advisory Committee was just a wonderful, constant source of support. They encouraged me with the creation of this guide, and I couldn't have spent this year researching, creating the guide, having this career development opportunity without their support. So I'd like to thank Catherine Watson, Lisa Sasser, Stephanie Toothman, Laura Tomick, Dawn Petting, and of course Harrison, who served on the committee in addition to supporting the year-long of support for this work. Next, a special thanks to Laura for taking extra time as a career coach and advisor, helping me to identify my strengths and hone my skills as a leader in the preservation field and as a program manager. Next, I want to thank Monica Rhodes. She's been helping me grow and has supported me in my career path for about a decade now, actually. She saw something in me years ago that I didn't quite see in myself yet, and encouraged me to carve out a path to my dream job, working to advance the preservation trades field. And I get to do that every day by means of the Hope Crew program at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And I got to deepen that by means of this fellowship. Thanks. The next thank you I want to give is to the fantastic program facilitators and creators who generously gave of their time so that I could learn about the programs, about their programs and all that went into creating them. This guide is a result of them allowing me to learn from their successes and stand on their shoulders. So I want to say thank you to Janina Peppers, Chris Turgeon, Jill Baum, Charlie Langowski, Mary Webb, Claire Finn, and Natalie Henshaw. I'd like to thank my friends and family who tirelessly support and encourage me both in my personal and career path. And most importantly, I want to thank Harrison Goodall. I'm exceedingly grateful to Harrison for providing the generous support for this opportunity to explore an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, the preservation trades. Thank you for being and you believed in my proposal, which first and foremost was such an honor. And then you have been a constant source of encouragement throughout this process. So thank you for that. I'm so thrilled to show my work, and I hope it's something that you'll be proud to share. So as I mentioned, I spent this last year creating the Preservation Trades Program Creation Guide. This includes a printable roadmap, a website to disseminate the information, and I'll show you a little bit more about my work. But first, I want to create a groundwork of why is this needed? Why is a preservation trades training program needed? Aren't there programs out there? And absolutely, yes, there are definitely programs out there. There's a variety of existing programs, including the one that I went to, Belmont College. I highly recommend that program. It's a wonderful opportunity to deepen your knowledge in the restoration and preservation trade skills and the theory side of why we preserve buildings. I begin this guide by discussing the existing programs and providing links to learn more about the wide variety of options out there. So knowing that there's existing programs, why did I create this? Well, there's a gap, and it's been noted by several organizations. First, despite the documented shortage of preservation trades workers, many training programs have closed and others struggle to maintain viability, as stated in the Preservation Trades Issue Brief, a joint effort of the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the National Preservation Partners Network. The brief goes on to attribute this phenomenon to the fact that many potential students are not aware of training opportunities, and training opportunities are not evenly distributed geographically. The time and resources needed to travel or move to participate in these programs limits participation. Further, the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation and their 2020 key principles to guide federal, state, and local workforce development and training efforts wrote that offering more widely available training opportunities in the traditional trades is one of the keys to address this noted issue. And then two, one of the longtime preservation experts in our country, Rudy Christian, stated that the shortfall of people skilled in the traditional trades is a problem that will continue to worsen every year if more high quality programs aren't created at a much faster rate than they are being created today. So with that in mind, I created the roadmap. I call it the roadmap because it is the guide's not a creation of stops along the route. It is naming the stops that already exist and piecing them together in a logical way for someone to develop a program. So what's in the roadmap? The components include participants, curriculum, implementation, budget and insurance, and fundraising. And I'd like to walk you through some of these pieces. First, participants. The participant piece helps those wishing to create a program to identify their audience first. It offers ways to partner with existing programs for a lighter lift or to build a freestanding program. It also shows ways in which we can establish a core through funding that's available through the core system. Next, the curriculum. The curriculum is pointing to the open source curriculum developed for the Newport Restoration Foundation's Preservation Trade Specialist Training Program and partnership with the Campaign for Historic Trades. The guide additionally points to the forthcoming virtual modules that will be available soon through the campaign. These trainings were built with development of labor approval as the first of its kind registered apprentice program for the preservation trades. So it will be a key component to anyone developing their program. In the meantime, the program that was developed for Newport Restoration had these pieces within the program: preservation fundamentals, traditional building styles, blueprint reading, building analysis and safety, carpentry and framing, brick and stone masonry, historic plaster, historic roofing, historic metal roofing, historic paints and finishes. And I went ahead and added certification for LEED certification. That's a way that we can connect the green building environment with preservation trades, which as preservation trades practitioners and preservationists, we already know that link exists. Here's a way to certify that and make it more accessible to people building these programs. Next, implementation. Implementation includes mapping a strategy to building a stakeholder team, providing opportunity for feedback, harness buy-in and enthusiasm, sustain commitment in the long term, and cultivating a culture of support. And as I show you in the guide when we flip through it, each one of these topics are provided in a way that go into depth on how to do these in your local area. So then the budget. Outlining the key pieces of a budget was really important. Wanted to make sure that there were things covered in a way that somebody would know all of the ways in which these programs could cost. So facilities and equipment, staffing, student support services, marketing and recruitment, operational costs, legal and compliance fees, and other miscellaneous expenses. Again, this list was developed by talking to those who have created successful programs and exploring all the pieces of their budget and what would be necessary to create a program. The budget does, and actually the program guide, a lot of times when we're going through these individual pieces, shows that by partnering with existing programs, we can offset a lot of these costs. We can tap into programs that already have a lot of these systems in place. So that's covered in the guide as well. But there's enough information there too, so that somebody that wants to create a freestanding program from the ground up can also do so. So next, insurance. This may feel like a tricky category. I wanted to make sure to address the necessary insurances needed. Again, partnering with existing organizations is a great way to cover these, but if you're building a program from the ground up, generally you're going to need liability insurance, workers' compensation insurance, professional liability insurance, and property insurance. And then it goes through the steps to mitigate the challenges associated with acquiring insurance. One of the really great pieces of the guide, I feel, is the resource section. The resource section points to existing insurers that specialize in these areas. So if the program is having trouble locating someone locally that could support providing insurance for a program like this, there's a list in the resource guide of places where they can find insurance to cover their program. Last, fundraising. There's many ways in which fundraising can take place. So I wanted to outline that. Some of the larger buckets I discussed in the guide are government grants and programs, private foundations and nonprofits, corporate sponsorship and partnership, peer organizations, crowdfunding, and community fundraising. These are all ways to create funds for your program. But additionally, that resource guide goes into individual list of donors that have been interested in workforce development and creating programs like this in the past. So next, the guide. I'd love to show you the guide. I created a printable version, as you can see here, but additionally, once it loads here, you can see there's a virtual version of it so that somebody can go online and flip through and see some of these things that I just outlined. So I'm pleased with how that turned out, so somebody wouldn't need to print it out, but it is available for print as well. So going back to the presentation, also the website. So the website, I'm really pleased with the way this came together. This is going to be the primary way in which I disseminate information about the Preservation Trades Program Creation Guide. It goes through a lot of the things I just mentioned with you all, the mission of the guide, why is the guide needed? It talks about the existing programs and goes into the intended results of the program. Outlines the elements, much like I did today. It showcases the guide in that similar flipbook fashion for somebody to see on the website, but also it creates a space for you to download your own version of the guide. And then again, the resource section. I think this is one of the really valuable things of the website and of the guide in particular. It goes through all those areas that we talked about and provides links to places to learn more, sources to learn more. As I mentioned, all of the curriculum information on how to start a core training for instructors. That's a piece that I didn't touch on, but that is in the guide, where to find instructors for your program if necessary, and ways to further their ability to teach. Information about insurance, funding sources. So that is the website. Flip back to my presentation here and share. Oh goodness, there we go. So what happens from here? Although my official time in the fellowship is over, I by no means intend to leave the work here. I've been able to recently share the guide with several program creators who are in the early stages of developing their programs, one in Ohio and one in Georgia. Additionally, in New Orleans, I recently signed an MOU with a local Job Corps program to help them adopt parts of the curriculum as an overlay to their existing carpentry program. Additionally, I plan to continue to share the guide through conference participation, through my work in communities, at my work through the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and by continuing to revise the roadmap based on the feedback I receive from those using the guide and creating programs. So with that, I'd love to hear your questions and hopefully answer any questions or thoughts you have about the program. I hope it's something that you see the use in and that could be helpful. So thank you again to everybody. I couldn't have done this without this wonderful support and with all of your guidance and feedback as I went through this effort.
Well, that was fantastic, Molly. I want to make sure we open it up for questions here. So everybody is probably on mute right now. So make sure you take yourself off mute if you have a question or something to ask of Molly. But I think looking at preservation and particularly trades through these sort of the systemic lens, like what is happening and how do we help grow a whole network of people, is so important. And I think that that's really, in a broad sense, what this contributes to. So I know from our perspective, it's super helpful. But I want to hear from others if anybody else has any other comments. But yeah, if you do, make sure you're off mute to make that comment or question. See Harrison.
Comment.
Oh, Harrison, you're on. Sorry, Harrison, you're still on mute. Harrison. No, Harrison, you're muted.
Okay.
There we go.
Now
There you
I'll
go.
get it. All right. Sorry. Molly, that was really spectacular. Thank you so much. And I think you've set a real model here for the fellowship presentations in terms of the way in which you've gone about letting us know what you're doing in some level of detail. And it sets a model. And thank you so much for how you put it together. My concern, having been in preservation for a tad, maybe a few years, is just getting started. Just that initial impulse of exciting someone to take the lead and go through the details and implement the program. And that's what I see as the challenge here, as well as with in any format, quite frankly. And I don't have any suggestions to you because I've been down this road many times before. And when starting from nothing, there's not a lot that the people that you want to excite have to relate to and be able to think about. And so I wish you well, particularly in exciting a few key places along the way to implement the program. And secondly, is the resource section is spectacular. Can't say anymore. I'd love to be able to go to a link and then get information and jump to another one and jump to another one and start learning and putting pieces together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harrison. And I'd love to address your comment about the challenge. Certainly, I understand that challenge in my work with Hope Crew when we're working locally with organizations at regional levels. This is a constant need that we see. There needs to be ways to help people understand that this is a road forward. This is a path. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to create create an opportunity that can spread the training opportunities more widely. Additionally, in the roadmap, I do talk about ways to attract participants to the program. And one of those ways is by going to existing programs that already have kind of loosely related goals, but not maybe preservation, and using those partnerships as a way to get somebody excited in what comes next. So even in my example of working with the local Job Corps program here in New Orleans, they are eager to find ways to make their participants more employable. So by looking through the guide and seeing that there was curriculum already developed for carpentry, and to add this onto what they already have so that their students could go out and address how many beautiful historic buildings exist in New Orleans and how little trades practitioners have that skill set was really important. And they saw the value in that and are adopting it. And I'm hoping that that serves as a model for other Job Corps programs across the nation. Additionally, I want to spread the word about this by means of my work on the ground, working with local organizations. So I'm hopeful. I do believe it will be a challenge, but it seems like the conversations are already happening. There is a need, there is a desire for something like this. And I'm hoping to continue to be able to share it so that it's useful for people wanting to create a program in their vicinity.
Molly, I agree with Harrison's assessment, and certainly it's a very valuable comment given Harrison's own reputation in the field. I was wondering if you had run this past Alicia, your predecessor, in terms of getting some feedback, because she certainly has tried to get a startup going and had various challenges, but also successes, and also through the New York City High School that is now devoted to preservation, to get their input. I think that would be very valuable. I also think that one of the big next steps is to sit down with Nick and others and see how do we find some additional funding for startups, whether it be an add-on to the Historic Preservation Fund. Mellon seems to be increasingly engaged with preservation issues, although right now it's more focused on research. But I think there needs to be, what we've got here with what you've done is something that we can take to funders, take to Congress. And obviously, Nick is well poised to help take that lead. One minor comment is if you have a friend who's a good editor, to go through it before you start printing it or reposting it. There's a number of minor typos, but for someone who had grammar beat into her in middle school and high school, I do think there is something, at least in my generation, maybe not more, that when you start seeing a number of little typos, it kind of puts a little question mark. Is this person really paying attention? And it's minor, but I think it's important for a polished presentation.
Yes, thank you for pointing it out. I actually had 2 people revise it. When you get so in the weeds of what you're doing and your mind fills in the gaps. So I did have 2 people look at it and offer revisions, but I will certainly do it again. That is one of the things I hope to continue, not even just the editing, but continue to revise this so it's useful. So thank you for that feedback. And if you would like to be an editor, I would highly.
I should have started keeping track. And it's minor things like an extra word that in editing didn't get deleted, or some tenses or things like that.
Thank you for
just have that. So congratulations in terms of what you've accomplished. It certainly meets what you hope to accomplish in your proposal.
Thank you.
I have maybe it's a counterbalance in a good way to your last one, Stephanie, and then kind of comment or question after that. But what really spoke to me was just, it's superficial, but the aesthetics of the guide and the website and like your format really is going to be, and you've already experienced this with the people you've been in touch with in Ohio and Georgia, is going to go miles for them rather than like a Word doc that's 60 pages long. That people like, oh, this is going to be really applicable, but they don't have the patience to kind of distill it. You did a great job with visuals. And as Harrison said, we all love seeing that resources and places to go. And Stephanie, I was laughing, thinking Alicia would have loved, like the order of the fellowships was reversed. If we could have had this to give to Alicia to then try her trade works, that would have been awesome. But my comment, or not but, and my comment is in the audience section, like I almost see this as when you get your printer guide to set up your new printer, everything, you know, what I love about this fellowship is it's so positive. It's saying, yeah, we have all these struggles, but here's a resource guide, here's something to help you. And it's not about, here are all the things that are wrong. But then I think about my printer guide, and then at the end it says troubleshooting. And I think, and Harrison alluded to, you know, his, how many year, 60-year struggle with some of these things. And I think of a few struggles that I have had, or I've seen, I should say, with others trying to implement development trades training programs. And it's that audience question of like, people have an audience in their head. Like the number of times I've heard people say, oh, we'll get homeowners and we'll train them. And then you put on the training and homeowners are too busy and they don't show up. So kind of vetting your audience. And then this issue of the single dynamic leader, who is the personality that starts. And I apologize if you got into some of that in there. Probably haven't done as fine tooth as Stephanie did. But anyway, so I'm very happy with the positive direction. But I also think of like the troubleshooting of, yeah, here are all the good things. And here are places where you may have a challenge. So how do you fix that audience issue? Or how do you fix that dynamic leader? And then dynamic leader leaves and the whole program falls apart.
Yes,
I want to clarify that that my comment was just very tiny because I think the graphics in the presentation is very important and being accessible. I've just finished a background research report and handed it now to the policy people to make it accessible. So that's very much in the forefront of my mind right now, that making it accessible, not having people turn and run from pages of Word document is very important. And to have it paired with the website opens up so many more possibilities.
And to Catherine's point, I would just like to say, I thought about including a frequently asked questions, but at this point it was hard to identify, and that's where some of that feedback, I hope, informs, you know, that troubleshooting guide, as you mentioned. I certainly see the value in that, and I think that'd be an important piece moving forward. And I'm hopeful that the folks that have this in hand now can, you know, give me that feedback. Where are the gaps? Where are the holes? Where do I need to do more research to fill in those things? Where are the resources to help people deal with whatever issue may come up? So that's where I hope to continue working on this and make it something useful. That's my biggest goal. I want this to be useful. I didn't want to spend a year doing this and then it just goes on the shelf or is a website that no one goes to. I want this to be something that's useful. So this feedback is helpful. I'm hoping to continue to receive feedback so that I can make it something that could help create more programs across the nation.
Molly, I'd like to echo everything that everyone has said up to this point. I think you've done a truly impressive job on this. I also think that the look of it, the graphics, the photographs are really inspirational. I mean, if I had seen something like that when I was in college or high school, it would have absolutely rocked my world. I think that it functions extremely well in this sort of holistic sense, looking at all of the issues and factors that go into this, both from the side of potential program developers, sponsors, facilitators, and also from the side of people that would be potentially attracted into these programs. I think that it's going to have a significant and important reach. I do have two questions. One is that under funding, you mentioned corporate support. And because of the sort of niche character of preservation, it has always been sort of problematic to get corporate support for these programs, which, let's say, DeWalt or Black & Decker or someone says, these people are using hand tools. Why do we care about funding them? And the other thing I really am happy to see the idea of getting into an association with LEAD within the program. And I'm interested to hear how you see the mechanics of that working, just because it's so geared toward architectural projects, chain of custody, all of this kind of thing. Is this sort of at the green associate level, or is there some other way of introducing this that might be worked out? And does this also tie into the deconstruction aspect? So anyway, fabulous job. I'm so impressed.
Thank you. Lots of layers there. So let me address your first question with corporate sponsors. We've had great luck at the National Trust with having different companies interested in supporting workforce development, hands-on training, specific projects, paint companies. We've had other larger foundations that are attracted to the program, Hope Crew. However, I realize that we have the National Trust name behind us, but that was one of the things I was hopeful with this guide. It could be something of a proposal, almost as a document to show somebody this is what we're hoping to create and inspire somebody to want to fund the program. There's resources in there as well. I wouldn't say it's exhaustive, but I feel like it's a really great start to begin to go down the list of organizations, companies, national funding sources that have had a history of supporting efforts like this in the past. Your other question about the LEED certification, that was something I incorporated based on some feedback from a program founder, Jill Baum. She had originally founded the program Northern Bedrock, and she's moved on to incorporating LEED training into historic preservation training through a large source of government funding and in partnership with the state of California. And that is through an online module that you can take to receive that certification. So it fits into the progression of the already available curriculum and is hopefully a seamless add-on to somebody that's already going through these modules and learning these skills. It's already there. There is occasionally some cost associated with it, but there's easy ways that are outlined on the websites I linked to avoid these costs and be able to adopt this training and adopt these skills and receive this certification. And then as far as deconstruction, that is, I just attended IPTW and the keynote speaker talked exactly about deconstruction being a means for preservation. And that's something as preservationists, I feel like have shied away from in the past. And it was so inspiring to hear her talk about the ways in which it is a path forward for us to save these important architectural elements. And she even mentioned her training that's available. And knowing that, I feel like that's something that certainly could be incorporated into the training modules, or as even somebody that you could bring in as a trainer. I talk about that in the guide, where you can find sources for trainers if somebody's not available locally. So it's funny that you mentioned that. After IPTW, was really inspired to include their work and have that mentioned as one of the skills that could be learned as a part of this guide. So thank you for bringing that up. I certainly haven't incorporated it yet, but I intend to after how inspiring May's presentation was.
Well,
Wonderful.
Molly, I have one question for you, and thank you for this fantastic presentation. I will echo all of the great comments previous to mine. I think this usability feature here and making it very accessible is a key a key piece that's going to really, I think, drive engagement around your great work. One comment. So as you were flipping through your presentation, I noticed a number of young women and people of all different types of backgrounds. And I think that's great, right? So all of the programs should have this angle where it's also thinking about diversifying the trades field. But with that in mind, in your guide, do you talk about or have you experienced any leaders that can provide some guidance on the how to bring young women in or people from different backgrounds into the space?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I know in working with you in the past that you know that's something very near and dear to my heart as a woman who started in the preservation trades. It was wonderful to see a space where I was welcome and that I could go and feel supported and nurtured and learning more. So very near and dear to my heart. I will say that in the kind of macro sense of creating more availability across the nation, I'm hoping that that also by nature encourages more diversity and more opportunities for anybody to see themselves in this field. But I would say that I could do more. I could do more to actually talk about engagement, how to specifically find ways to engage people, diverse people who traditionally haven't seen themselves in this field. So thank you for bringing that up. And again, I'm noting that as something that I'd like to incorporate.
And one thing I'd add to that, Molly, is you have Beyond Hands-On instructor trainer training in there as a resource. And, you know, part of that class is about the equitable classroom and about ways in which trades instructors can, like you said, you felt welcome in the field. Well, that's not the experience of everyone who is not within that very slim margin of, you know, who is traditionally in preservation trades. So that is one way that you already have something in there, but you could spell it out a bit more of how do we get our trades trainers to be creating an environment that is more inclusive in the first place.
Great, thank you for that.
One more piece I thought about is, as Catherine was talking, is I believe out in Washington State, there's a corps that has a deaf or hard of hearing participants. And a few years back, they expressed some interest in learning more about preservation. So I don't know if they were on your radar, but this piece about accessibility and allowing as many people as possible to engage in the space is important.
Great, thank you for reminding. I think the last time I heard about that corps was when we were still working together at the trust, and it had fallen off my radar. So I'm glad to have that brought to the front of my mind. I know that's we're always looking for opportunities within the Hope Crew to work with organizations that create spaces for everybody to learn. But I'm knowing that that preservation trades is something that they're interested in learning. I'd love to reach out and share the guide with them as well.
Molly, I just want to bring up back the.
Go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Harrison.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Don.
All right. I ran a preservation program in the summer for a university, and you just brought it up to my mind now that we had finances easily because they were all registered students. They were all paying for their education, and so it wasn't even an issue. And we had partnerships with the national park and state parks to do the work, and it was terrific. But they were students who cared a great deal about preservation, but didn't know a whole lot about how to proceed with the techniques of the preservation. But anyway, I very much appreciated your piece. It's great.
I just want to say Dawn is an inspiration to so many people who've been through that course. I think it's in its 30th year. But perhaps we don't want to feel too old, but it was a tremendous inspiration for a lot of people who went on to preservation careers. We brought in the 3 state historic preservation offices in the Pacific Northwest. And while it wasn't a full-fledged course, as you've outlined, it was one that gave people a taste of what it could be. And so I think that we shouldn't forget, as John has indicated, the universities who have preservation programs may be a ripe for taking on something like this, maybe not at full scale, but having that opportunity to introduce people who are already interested in preservation to experience what it means to work in the trades.
Hi, Molly. My name is Kateri and I'm the 2024 fellow. And I just wanted to say hello and congratulations. And I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. You set the bar high in the best way. And I'm really looking forward to looking at your guide a little more closely. Thank you.
Thank you so much and good luck with this next year. I can
Thank
say
you.
from experience, it's just the best opportunity. And on the other side of it, I think you will look back and just see growth in your career and personal growth and just feel like you're really contributing to the preservation trades field. So I'm excited for your year ahead. I'm sad mine is over, but I don't plan to quit the work. But I am sad that I don't get to interact with this wonderful group on a regular basis like I have been.
Well, thank you. Your work is inspiring. I'm looking forward to looking into it more closely.
Well, I want to thank Molly and everyone for your input and participation. This is not the end of the project in the sense that I hope that it lives on, and I trust that it will. It's going to provide a lot of valuable resources, not only at convenings, but also when people come forward and ask for this kind of thing, to give them that information. Because at the Preservation Maryland, the Campaign for Historic Trades, receive a lot of inquiries around this line of questioning. How do I start a program? What should I be thinking about? And now we have something that's been really well thought through to support that. And so I think it's going to support an entire industry moving forward. So want to thank Molly and thank everyone for their participation. And we're going to bring this part of the presentation to a conclusion.